Alexander Hamilton was America's first treasurer. Originally, he was not from the 13 colonies, but after the death of his mother, the community that he was surrounded by was able to raise enough money to send him to college in America because they wanted this bright, passionate individual to get a better education. When Hamilton reached the States, he became very passionate about the American Revolution and freeing America from British tyranny. And it was then where he would become essentially a secretary for George Washington. However, despite working for Washington and being basically his right hand man throughout the entire war, Hamilton eventually quit because he wanted to fight. He didn't want to be Washington's secretary. And Washington finally gave in and was like, okay, you can do this very one specific thing at the Battle of Yorktown, because hopefully it was going to be the last battle, anyways. And upon doing this, Hamilton was able to do not only do his job, but help do everyone else's. And he was able to get this glory that he wanted. After the Revolution, he started working as a lawyer after finishing his college degree. Upon doing this, he would gain notoriety as a very elegant, passionate speaker, which would eventually lead to Washington asking him to become the Secretary of Treasury after the Articles of Confederation ended up being rewritten. Hamilton also was a very firm believer in the United States Constitution, having wrote 51 of the 85 Federalist Papers, which were essays anonymously published that would defend the Constitution and would eventually help lead to the Constitution getting put in place. After this happened, he would become the Secretary of Treasury, where he would work directly beside Washington and the rest of his cabinet members. Hamilton did not have a good relationship with the other cabinet members. He constantly quarreled with John Adams, the vice president, over being leaders of the Federalist Party, and he quarreled with Thomas Jefferson, who was a Democratic Republican, over differing beliefs on state and government issues. Jefferson saw Hamilton as somebody that wanted to make the government too powerful. He thought he wanted to take away states' rights, and one of the biggest things that they quarreled about was whether to assume the debt on a national level. However, his life would soon take a downward spiral, where after leaving his position as Secretary of Treasury, details of his affair with a woman named Maria Reynolds would start to spread around the country. After this happened, he ended up posting an article titled "The Reynolds Pamphlet" in the national newspaper, explaining everything that happened in detail as a way to try and save his legacy. This did the opposite, because now he was known as an adulterer. And after this happened, tragedy would strike his family, where his son, Philip Hamilton, would die in a duel. After this happened, Hamilton started to go to church more often with his kids, and he started to pray, stuff that he had never done before because he had never felt like he had to, right? He lost his mom young. He never really had a connection with religion because he had felt like there was no God because of all of this stuff that had happened to him. Eventually, he stepped away from politics entirely until his lifelong friend and rival Aaron Burr had ran for president. When this happened, he ended up speaking against Aaron Burr and supporting Thomas Jefferson, causing Burr to lose the election. After this happened, Burr ran for governor of New York when the end of his term as vice president was coming to a halt. And Hamilton also spoke out against Burr when he was running for governor. When this happened, Burr ended up challenging Hamilton to a duel in which Burr would shoot Hamilton. This duel took place in New Jersey, across the river from Manhattan, and Aaron Burr would shoot Hamilton right between the ribs. He ended up being rowed across the Hudson, and his wife Elizabeth Hamilton and her sister Angelica Schuyler were both by his side when he passed away. After this happened, his wife Elizabeth Schuyler did a lot of good in Hamilton's name. She raised funds for the Washington Monument. She opened the first orphanage in New York City and was able to do a lot of the stuff that she thought Hamilton would want to have accomplished if his life wasn't cut short. In the end, Hamilton was one of America's first national heroes, and despite whether or not his politics were correct, he always fought for what he believed in. He always said what he believed, and I think that's a quality that is to want to have in our politicians today.